ఏదో అడుగుదాం యూట్యూబ్ చాట్ బాక్స్ ఓపెన్ చేయాలని నిన్న ఏం మెసేజ్ చాట్ బాక్స్ ఆన్ मतलब डाउट फाइंड करता है सर ऑडियो थ्रू ಇದು ಯೂಟ್ಯೂಬ್ ಒಳಗೆ ಆಡಿಯೋದಿಂದ ಕೇಳಬಹುದು ಆಡಿಯೋ ಕಾಲ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಇವತ್ತು ಒಂದಿನ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು Ma'am, please explain about granulocytes. Ma'am, can you explain about phagocytosis?
Granulocytes or WBCs?
Neutrophils, vesicles, eosinophils.
Student has asked about explain about the granulocytes. So granulocytes, these are the leukocytes. So these leukocytes are like granular leukocytes and granular leukocytes. Granular leukocytes are nothing but where the granular pigments are present within the cell cytoplasm. Within the cell cytoplasm, there is a more deposition of the granular pigment, results in the single nucleus which is present within the cell at the center of the cell. They are gets modified into somewhat it is lobed ones. Based upon the number of lobes of their nucleus within the granular leukocytes, these are mainly classified into the neutrophils, eosinophils, as well as the basophils. So neutrophils they are mainly possessing the more than 2 lobes nucleus. The nucleus is multi-lobed nucleus we are going to observe like this. So this lobes of this nucleus is mainly because of the excessive deposition of the granular pigment within the cell cytoplasm. So such type of neutrophils are mainly, they may be of around about more than 60 to 65% in our body, and they are involving in phagocytosis process. The phagocytosis in the sense they are mainly engulfing the foreign bodies or maybe the antigens, or it might be the pathogens which are entering into our body. So these, the pathogens as well as antigens molecules are gets engulfed and they will get destroyed. While the phagocytosis process, these cells they mainly secretes one of the proteinous substance is called as opsonin. So the deposition of this opsonin around the pathogen body. Suppose this is the pathogen, or it is an antigen, or it is one of the invading microorganism. Around this, the invading microorganism, there is a deposition of the opsonin. This opsonin is mainly secreted by the phagocytic cells, like the neutrophils as well as eosinophils, or the macrophages. So because of this deposition of this opsonin content onto the surface of antigen or maybe the pathogen body, so it is referred as, it is known as opsonization process. Opsonization process. Because of opsonization process, the opsonin content protein is gets deposited around the antigen pathogen body, and the phagocytic cell is moved towards this opsonin content. As a result of that, it is able to identify its own opsonin, and it will be gets engulfed into the neutrophil, or it might be the acidophils. So results in, so the acidophils are maybe neutrophils, they are mainly possessing the cytolysins. So these cytolysins, they mainly act upon these pathogen body or maybe antigen body, and they will destroy these invading pathogens or maybe microorganisms. Thus, they are involving in phagocytosis process. Next. So rather than this neutrophils, some of the other ones, other one it is called as the acidophils. These acidophils are some auto the bilobed nucleus they are mainly possessing. So where here also the more deposition of the pigment we are going to observe. The such type of acidophils, they are not only involving in phagocytosis process, even though they are involving in allergic inflammations. Allergic inflammation. Then the last one is the basophils. The basophils are the trilobed ones. Basophils are trilobed ones. Here also the excessive deposition of the pigment will be there. So, but the basophil function is not still it is identified. It's not. It is accurate. Okay. The subset of basophils, they are gets modified into the mast cells, and they are able to secrete the three chemicals. So when these basophils are entered into the areolar tissue or maybe connective tissue, so these are gets modified into mast cell. So these mast cells are mainly secretes the three chemicals like the heparin content, then serotonin, then histamine. So these are the three chemicals secreted by the mast cells, but these mast cells are modified from the basophils. So here is new acidophil. Here is basophil. The basophils are modified into mast cells. So that is about the granular leukocytes. These granular leukocytes are also called as PMNL, that is polymorphonuclear leukocyte cells. Polymorphonuclear leukocytes. So whatever the nucleus is there, it is a multi-lobed nucleus or maybe bilobed, trilobed nucleus. That's why it's called as polymorphonuclear. The morphological nature of the nucleus is somewhat it is changes. Its shape as well as size is somewhat changes due to the excessive deposition of the pigments. That's why it's called as polymorphonuclear leukocytes. But as in case of granular leukocytes, so where we are going to observe the two types of cells, it is called as the lymphocyte cells and the monocyte cells. The monocyte cells, they are migrate from the bone marrow, and these lymphocytes as well as monocytes, they are mainly secreted within the bone marrow, in bone tissue, the bone marrow, and the monocyte cells, they are comes out from the bone marrow and they are entered into the tissues, connective tissues, and they are modified into the macrophages. So these macrophages are also called as wandering cells. These are also called as the phagocytic cells. So they are involving in phagocytosis process. But whatever the monocytes, they are mainly possessing the nucleus. The nucleus is somewhat these large, enlarged ones, and these the kidney-shaped ones. The subset of monocytes, they are mainly modified into phagocytic cells. But the lymphocyte cells, which are produced in the bone marrow, and they are comes out from the 50% of the lymphocytes, they are comes out from the bone marrow, and they are migrate towards the thymus region. So where these are gets matured and gets differentiated, and they are involving in the cell-mediated immunity. They provide the cell-mediated immunity to our body. But some of the lymphocytes, they are modified in, they are matured in bone marrow. Those are referred as the B lymphocyte cells. So these B lymphocyte cells, they are mainly provide the immunity by secreting the antibodies. They are mainly provide the humoral immunity to our body. But the lymphocyte cells which are matured in thymus, these are referred as T lymphocyte cells. So this is about the granulocytes.
Thank you for my doubt clarification. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Then Gleason's capsule. The current Gleason's capsule. Gleason's capsule. Liver tissues.
The one of the student has asked about the Gleason's capsule. The Gleason's capsule is present around the liver lobule. It's one of the connective tissue, dense connective tissue layer present around the liver lobules. So here it is, suppose if you take the transverse section of this liver, we are going to observe the liver lobule. So this liver lobule is mainly possessing the central canal. Mainly possessing central canal. From the central canal of this liver lobule, the hepatic cords are derived. So these hepatic cords, these are arranged in the form of strings, and they are migrate towards the peripheral region, and these are highly branched ones. So these are called as hepatic cords, and whatever these cells are involving in the formation of the hepatic cords, these are called as hepatocyte cells. That is liver cells. That is liver cell. So these hepatocyte cells, they mainly secrete. The secretion is called as bile juice, which is stored in the gallbladder. It is stored in gallbladder. But here it is called as hepatic cord. But the space present between the hepatic cord is called as a sinusoids. Whatever the hepatocyte cell secretes the bile juice, they are gets poured into the diffuses into the sinusoids. From the sinusoids, they are gets diffuses into the central canal of this liver lobule, and then it is in turn opens into the liver tubules, duct tubes. But around this, the hepatic lobules, there is a presence of the dense connective tissue layer is called as the Gleason's capsule. So this Gleason's capsule is mainly possessing the blood vessels, lymphatic vessels, and the nerves. Blood vessels, lymphatic vessels, and the nerves. They are just innervating through this Gleason's capsule into the liver lobules. So thus it regulates the liver lobule activity by the innervating these nerves as well as some other sensory structures. So this is called Gleason's capsule. So the thrombin is one of the activating form of the protein. The prothrombin is mainly secreted by the liver. The prothrombin is mainly secreted by the liver. The liver synthesizes this prothrombin in the presence of the vitamin K, which is extracted from the stomach. In the presence of this vitamin K, the liver cells, they are able to secrete the one of the protein is called as prothrombin. So this prothrombin is inactive form. So this inactive form prothrombin in the presence of the calcium ions, and it is converted into, apart from that, not only in the presence of calcium ions, even though in the presence of the thromboplastin. The thromboplastin or maybe thrombokinase is mainly released by the damaged cells or maybe the damaged tissues. The damaged tissue cells, they mainly releases the thrombokinase enzyme. This thrombokinase enzyme is act upon the prothrombin. In the presence of calcium ion, it gets converted into the thrombin. So far the thrombin is active in nature. So this thrombin is in turn act upon the fibrinogen, and it is converted into the active fibrin. So thus there is the formation of the clotting. The clotting process is occurs. because of this activation of the prothrombin into active thrombin. This thrombin is act upon the one of the plasma protein is called as fibrinogen. The fibrinogen is insoluble ones. Sorry, it is soluble ones. It gets converted into insoluble fibrin, and these fibrin molecules they are gets entangled around the damaged part of the tissue or maybe the organs. So thus it prevents the excessive flow of the blood from the damaged part of the body. So thus it plays a vital role blood coagulation or the clotting.
What are the irregular tissues? Explain us that.